It's rare to find somebody who's never experienced a headache, but some people get a lot of headaches and really can be quite disabled by them. But one of the most misunderstood and indeed misdiagnosed forms of headache is migraine, which is a shame because there are very effective treatments available.
I actually can remember my first headache vividly because it was I was 17 years old and I was at school when it happened. I started getting the headache during a lesson, but it intensified when I was during the lunch break, and I remember trying to find anywhere that I could lie down, and I started seeing spots in front of my eyes and I didn't know what was going on.
So we're talking about at least 1 in 4 women has migraine. So this is really one of the most common disorders that you're going to be dealing with across the board. It's about 1/3 as common in men. So those are prevalence statistics. If you actually look at incidence, the incidence of migraine over the lifetime approaches 50% in women.
It's incredible.
It is incredible.
And how badly affected?
Some people are able to manage them and are not terribly disabled, but a good chunk of the patients who are getting migraine are completely incapacitated when they have an attack.
When you are suffering from a migraine, it's so kind of all-encompassing that you really are just dealing with the practicalities of trying to find somewhere to lie down.
Now, there are all sorts of headaches. Just quickly describe them and what's the difference with migraine?
Yeah, well, so the common forms of what are called primary headaches are...
And when you say primary, you
primary meaning there's not a cause for it, like you haven't been just whacked in the head or
meningitis
have a brain
or something.
tumor or meningitis. So the primary headaches are tension-type headaches, migraine headaches, and then this other kinds of headaches like cluster headaches. It's not simply a headache. It's actually a kind of constellation of other symptoms, including light and sound sensitivity, nausea, fatigue is very common. And these headaches actually occur over a period of hours to days. Some patients have a visual aura consisting of flashing lights or waving lines. About 1/3 of migraine patients get that. And then other patients have other very dramatic symptoms like language dysfunction or numbness and tingling on one side of the body. And then commonly there are symptoms like mood change, change in appetite. So these sorts of symptoms are occurring both before, during, and after the actual headache part of it. And again, can happen over long periods of time.
And can you get things like the numbness and tingling without the headache?
That's right, yeah. So, and when that occurs, very often we're concerned about other causes like a stroke. Yeah, some patients, it's actually quite common, especially as people get older, to have just the visual aura without necessarily having a headache following it.
Unfortunately, my main trigger is a hormonal trigger. But before it started being this regular hormonal trigger, it was stress mostly that triggered an episode. And as I said, it was after a stressful period that I then would have a migraine. So the stress would go away and then I'd get a migraine. And the other trigger for me is alcohol. So unfortunately, I can't drink alcohol or it will trigger a migraine.
First of all, there's a genetic predisposition. The migraine tends to run in families. So there are some patients who are unfortunately predisposed based on their genes. And then a variety of environmental factors can feed into it. So people often focus on specific individual foods like chocolate or cheese. Red wine is a very common migraine trigger. But for most people, that's only one of, again, a constellation of different sorts of environmental factors that can play a role. So other common migraine triggers, long periods between meals. So if you skip a meal and then have a glass of red wine and cheese, then you're much more likely to have a headache than if you just had one of those factors alone. So some people can make a pretty big dent in their headaches just by doing some very simple lifestyle modifications. And then we divide treatments into acute treatments that are given to abort an attack once it occurs, and then preventive treatments that are ones taken every day to try and keep them from happening. And the latter we only use in people who have either very severe attacks or very frequent attacks, and the others we focus mostly on just the acute treatments that they take when they get one.
So give me an example of acute
So
treatment.
the gold standard for the acute treatment in modern headache medicine are the triptans. So these are called triptans because their chemical name ends in tryptan.
And they block a particular transmitter in the brain.
Right, so they work very specifically on a subset of serotonin receptors in the brain.
And the preventatives?
So the preventives, there's a variety of them. All of them were originally developed to treat something else. So we still use beta blockers, which were our blood pressure medicines, antidepressants like amitriptyline, and then seizure medications like valproate sodium and topiramate have been more recently introduced.
An interesting finding in migraine research over recent years is that the wave of brain excitability that leads to a migraine attack starts in the neck and moves forward. And some people believe that the occipital nerves, which come over the back of your skull, are involved and could be used to head off the attack.
It's kind of the funny bone of the head, basically, because the nerves are, in a position where they can be compressed right there. There's actually quite intense interest in the occipital nerves because they feed directly into some of these brain pathways that we think are responsible for migraine. So there are actually now stimulator devices that people have developed that basically provide a constant sort of electrical buzz that some patients with migraine find quite helpful. Many migraine patients get neck pain. So either before, during, or after their attack, they have soreness and stiffness in their neck. And this leads many people to seek chiropractic treatment or massage treatment, when in fact really this is just a symptom of their migraine. And if you effectively treat the migraine, the neck pain actually goes away. So many migraine patients go through this kind of negotiation phase where they sort of think, oh, maybe I'm having a headache. Oh, no, I'll wait. And so really whatever sort of acute treatment you're going to use, the earlier the better. If you even think you're having a migraine, 99% of the time you're going to be right. So if it crosses your mind, treat it.